Okay, a lot earlier on in these videos we looked at the concept of the Data Protection Act, not a lot earlier, it was a couple of videos ago, Data Protection Act, Computer Misuse Act. And it was really to deal with the concept of, if you like, data loss, and not just a loss/theft, which are two different things really. Loss, perhaps you could argue, is not deliberate, and theft, of course, being deliberate. The thing is that you guys at GCSE level need to understand, GCSE Cambridge Nationals level I should say, need to understand that there are sort of three groups of people that can be affected as a result of data loss or even corruption or theft. Let's focus on the first one, and that's the customers. Now, if you think about it logically, and this happens quite often. A recent one, it's October 2012, and there's one very recently. You probably want to have a little Google around. NatWest have had a service where you could use an app on a phone. They withdrew it because it was abused, but it was an app on the phone that if you didn't have your card, you could generate a number you typed into a cash machine and it would give you the cash anyway, and it was abused quite heavily by the criminal underworld. But the whole point being, what I'm trying to drive at, is that if there is some form of loss of data or theft of data, it's going to impact upon the customers of the business. And the reality is that what you will see is that the customers will have a reduced confidence in the particular business. If that business loses their data, the customer goes, well, it's not very good, I'm not very happy with you. It depends on how big the breach is. I would imagine most of those NatWest people, there's a lot that lost their money, maybe have probably switched banks as a result of it. And that, I guess, is what this can lead on to. And we'll come back to this, is that the customer, the business will actually perhaps lose the customers as they would switch, if possible, to a different provider. Again, it's dependent on what the organisation is. We're not just talking about banks here. But the big thing for the customer is the concept of identity theft. The reality is that if data is stolen, and whether that data is credit card details or your personal details, whatever it's going to be, there's the potential that if somebody gets their hold of details about you, they then have the ability to commit identity theft. Now, what that, of course, can lead to is debt, and this actually has happened to me several years ago, about 5 years ago, on Christmas Eve. And I was lucky, I was checking my online bank account. Somebody in Hungary withdrew 300 euros in Budapest from my bank account. It turned out, actually, and I'll give this story if I'm allowed to because it's a true story, that it turned out that a local garage that I used to get fuel from, they were doing what they call skimming cards, and it was obviously cloned and used elsewhere. But what we're trying to drive at, because this is more, we're talking about computers here. This is the idea, realistically, that somebody perhaps might hack into the servers where data is stored about you. Or let's say for a company, let's say and this Anonymous do this a lot. And they hack into, a big hack recently, not by Anonymous, was PlayStation 3 websites. Their online sales site was hacked, wasn't it? And as I understand it, that the personal details and credit card details were all stolen from there, and various people, credit card details were lost as well. And I don't know what happened. I don't know if most of you guys, if it happened to you, did you, like I can hear you, did you not use PlayStation 3 anymore? I don't know. Look, the whole point being is that when we buy stuff online, all of our data ends up somewhere else. And I want to give you one piece of advice for the future. It's not on the spec. Okay? There are two types of cards. You can use PayPal as well, but there are two major types of cards that you can use online to buy stuff. You have the credit card and you have the debit card. If you're going to buy stuff online in future, this is the one to use, and this is not the one to use. The reality is that if somebody gets your details and then goes and uses your credit card for a spending spree online themselves, if you have a credit card, you're insured against that. most debit cards do not offer that insurance. We're not saying that you'll never get your money back. The reality is that when I had my card cloned, it was a debit card, and I was with Barclays Bank at the time, and they did in fact give me my money back, so I was able to prove it wasn't me. I had to do it very quickly. But with a credit card, there's far less formal things to go through. So if you're going to use and buy stuff online, and maybe there's something you should tell your parents, tell them to use a credit card rather than a debit card. So that's the impact that data loss can have on customers. They lose confidence in the business, and of course they have the potential for identity theft, and therefore the potential to ultimately rack up a lot of debt in their name, but not carried out by them. But of course, it's not only the customers that are part of a business, as well as the business, which we'll come on to in a moment. We have the employees of a business. Now, most hacking in your school is done by you, the students, trying to get into the network. Certainly, we've had a few attempts at hacking at our school, and it's always the kids in the school that do it. And I remember reading once, and don't quote me on this, that 51% of all shoplifting is done by the employees of the shop. They're the ones on the rob. Whether that's changed, I don't know. That was something I read maybe 15 years ago. What I'm trying to drive at is that when it comes to theft of data in an organization, the person most likely to nick it is somebody that works for the company. So, what I want to look at here is what is the effect on the employee should they decide that they want to steal the personal detail maybe of the customers or other employees that work there. It depends on the level of what you've done. Okay, and there are various examples. For example, a student at our school might decide to log into someone else's user area and copy their coursework. It's theft of data, but it's not really a big problem. They may get from me a verbal warning, because they didn't delete the other person's work. But if we now, and verbal warning is the first step, I want to actually walk you through what we call the discipline process in business. Discipline, not process, procedure. Which is kind of like process. Ooh, procedure. If you're a naughty boy or girl at work, you're going to get a verbal warning first of all. If you're naughty again, you're going to get a written warning. In fact, it's normal that you would get, if you keep on being naughty, you might get 2 of them. And after that, obviously, you would get dismissed. But the thing is, of course, if you want to go, if you're an employee of, say, Amazon, and you nick the entire credit card details of everybody that ever bought anything, and then you go out and do a huge identity theft worth millions of pounds, you're not going to get a verbal warning. You're going to go straight to dismissal. And the thing is, if you do something like that, huge theft, that might be regarded as what we call, well, it will be regarded as gross misconduct, which can lead to dismissal from the organisation. But of course, it can also lead to prosecution, because you're actually carrying out a crime there, a theft. If you do something, naughty, and you end up in your business eventually losing your job, and it's because you keep deleting work from someone else's user and you do it 3 or 4 times, one thing that you might want to consider is that you would probably end up with a poor reference. And if you have a poor reference and you go for another job, and they will always ask you for a reference from your previous employer, they'll want to know who you work for. If you've got a poor reference, the bottom line, you as an employee will find it difficult to find work. That ain't going to happen. Okay? So that's kind of a little bit of a warning to you that that's the procedure that a business will go through. And ultimately, if you go nicking stuff, how big or how small, it's kind of up to you. Not up to you. I'm implying you should go and do it. No, don't do it. I'm saying don't go and steal things. In life, just don't do it. It's not worth it. You'll end up being prosecuted or dismissed and never working again. Okay. So, we've talked about the customers of the business. We've talked about the employees of the business. The other thing is the business itself. Now, we've already indicated that a business, if it loses data, and no business will deliberately lose data. Well, I can't think of a scenario where they would do. No business would deliberately lose or have their data stolen or deliberately have it corrupted. It's not in their interest. But if it were to happen, what we've mentioned already is that customer confidence is going to confidence, that's supposed to be a C, goes down. And if customer confidence goes down, you lose customers, which means that you lose revenue, money in, which means that you lose profit. Well, actually, that's assuming that you're selling things at profit, and if you're not, then that's a really crap business. Oh, that's a very poor business, I should say. But ultimately, that's the pattern it should take. And ultimately, could this mean that you end up having to close the business down? Don't know. PS3 didn't close down, NatWest haven't closed down. They've lost customer confidence, they've lost some customers, but they've still survived. But that may not be the case for all businesses. The problem that businesses are faced with is if they do lose data and it's proven that there was not adequate security and they weren't keeping things safe, which is part of the Data Protection Act. Data must be kept secure. If there wasn't adequate security, then this can lead to claims for compensation. Now, in the UK, we're not like America, where someone stole my file, you owe me $45 million. We're not kind of like that. We're a little bit more downbeat, aren't we, when it comes to compensation? But ultimately, compensation can be a very large expense for the business and potentially could once again lead to the possibility that you may have to close the business down because there's no money left in the business because it's all been paid out in compensation. And if there's not fines and you're breaking the Data Protection Act, or so if there's not security and you're breaking the Data Protection Act, it could also potentially lead to fines as well as compensation to the people that you owe the money to. And of course, if you do end up with a hack, you're not secure. There's a solution to not being secure. You pay for greater security, which of course is going to be a cost for the business. And a cost, we don't know how much it's going to be, but maybe that cost would be so great that they wouldn't make any profit, which might mean to close. We don't know. But those are the three angles that you can really take it from. With a business, it's all about customers losing confidence, so you lose your customers. You could end up with fines and compensation. And of course, if you have been hacked, you've got to increase your security, which is going to have a cost attached to it. Whether it's new software or new people employed or specialists to come in, I don't know, but you're going to have to do something about it, because if you don't do something about it, your other customers are going to go, well, hold on a minute, you got hacked and now I'm not confident, and they're going to go away, and you get the idea. It's an ever decreasing circle. So there we go. I was going to do a quick scan through. Let's see if, yes, it seems to have, did that work this time? Yeah, customers is one angle. Confidence ID theft is what we're really looking for. When it comes to employees, now my graphics have gone again, haven't they? That bit stayed though. Those are the sort of 4 levels of dismissal procedure that you can go through. And finally, and this one did stay, you've got the concept of the business, and the business is going to be hit with a lack of consumer confidence, potential fines and compensation, and an increase in security costs. I think in the forthcoming videos I shall no longer go back through to recap, because it doesn't seem to retain my drawings. Anyway, there we go.